First of all, I'd like to thank the TEDx organizers for having me here. I have discovered that Grand Rapids pollen is different than San Francisco pollen. So if I'm clearing my throat a little, that's just, I'm Claritin resistant. So hopefully the genes, the guy working on the genetic stuff is going to fix that for us. If I was going to ask one of you to come up on stage and join me, and I won't, so don't worry, but if I was going to ask you to, it's pretty easy. You'd get out of your seat, you'd come down the aisle, you'd walk up the stairs, and you'd be with me. Now, what I want you to do is imagine that in this front row, we have a pack of honey badgers. You know honey badgers? We have a flash flood coming through, and Dick Cheney with his favorite shotgun. All right. That changes the game a little, right? Changes the game. What it's going to take for you to get to me, that's going to take some ingenuity on our part. We're going to have to figure out how to get past those obstacles. In the year 2000, a fellow named Thomas Homer Dixon wrote a book called The Ingenuity Gap. And in that, he made the case that the proliferation of social, economic, and environmental problems that we're facing are outpacing our supply. That sounds about right. So just think about, this was in 2000, think about all the honey badgers and flash floods and literally Dick Cheneys that we've had since the year 2000, the last 13 years. Terrorist acts, wars, the health crisis growing, political failures that we're living with now, the state of our environment, human rights violations occurring around the world. These events, the tyrants, scoundrels, and catastrophes that we have had to live through in the past 13 years validate Homer Dixon's thesis for us. Our supply of solutions to the most daunting challenges that we're facing as mankind are being outstripped by both the speed and complexity of the social, economic, environmental, political, and technological changes that are occurring. We're all living with the consequences of that today. We're living with the consequences of this ingenuity gap. Globally, locally, professionally, personally, we don't need more evidence, we don't need more facts, we don't need more stats. We feel it in our gut. We know what it means to live with that. But the good news is it doesn't have to be our fate. We actually have a choice. We can choose to turn a blind eye and retreat into our everything is just fine bubble. And when you think about the complexity of this challenge, these challenges that we're faced with, that's tempting. Or we can take on those challenges that are facing us as a species. And we can put our faith in man's innate ability to come up with ingenious solutions to those problems. We've been hearing about some of those ingenious ideas today. That's what TED's about. It's about spreading those. I choose to put my faith in human ingenuity. Okay? But my faith isn't going to be enough. I think of human ingenuity as our ability to conceive of clever, original, and practical solutions from existing resources. We've heard stories of that today. Existing resources, things that are at our disposal, right? But faith isn't going to be enough. We're going to have to actually resolve to do it. We can't talk about it. We've been hearing about tag, you're it, and the action. We have to resolve to take action. We have to resolve to do something. And we have to keep that resolve when we're faced with the kind of resistance that we will encounter, and we will. But resolve and faith won't be enough on their own because there's something else that keeps us from increasing our supply of ingenious solutions. There's something else there. It's a set of beliefs and practices that determine why we're solving, who has permission to solve, what we're solving, and how we're solving. So we're going to need faith. We're going to need resolve. But we're also going to have to find new ways to break these problem-solving orthodoxies. They're orthodoxies that actually put the execution cart before the ingenuity horse. You're going to recognize them. Some of you may not agree with me. That's fine. But the rational orthodoxy puts measurable outcomes before the passion, dreams, and aspirations that drive and fuel us as human beings. The ROI orthodoxy which puts profits before possibilities. The creative genius orthodoxy, which puts the status of an elite few. I'm trained as a designer. I know about status of being a designer. But it puts the status of an elite few before the potential of many, of everyone. The innovation orthodoxy. I loved Tim's talk on innovation. It was fantastic. But there's an orthodoxy that surrounds innovation that puts the invention of things before our investment in people. And it turns out it's the people who are going to create those things. The war room orthodoxy, which puts secrecy before serendipity. The best practices orthodoxy, which puts efficiency before disruption. The strategic plan orthodoxy, which puts deadlines before discovery. And the scale orthodoxy, which puts the reach of one solution before the value of having many options. Do we recognize those? Everybody lives with those orthodoxies and the consequences of them. These problem-solving orthodoxies are born from a set of fundamental practices that are used in business and organizations everywhere today. We've all encountered them in one form or another. And they're useful when you're certain of the challenge that you're solving and the solution is well and deeply understood. They're really valuable. But they can be toxic when you're uncertain of where to start. We don't really even get the challenge. We're not really even sure where to start, and we certainly don't know what the solutions are. To jump the ingenuity gap, we must find new practices that break our problem-solving orthodoxies, increase the number of people solving, increase the speed with which we're solving, and increase the ingenuity of those solutions. To close the gap, we need a set of rapid ingenuity practices. So over more than a decade, my partner, John Bielenberg, and I have been privileged to work with some leaders that we affectionately refer to as the idiots. Now, we do that behind their back and we do that in front of them because they operate at what's considered the lunatic fringe of business and the public sector and the social sector. And it's through this collaboration that we've honed 6 practices of rapid ingenuity. There are many others that you're going to hear about and that you're familiar with, but these are 6 that we use. Be bold. Get out, think wrong, make stuff, bet small, and move fast. These practices have proven their ability to help wildly diverse teams, and I would encourage wildly diverse teams, by the way, wildly diverse teams of experts and lay people to quickly produce ingenious solutions not only to their daunting challenges, but to their everyday challenges. We use these practices at Future to drive a supply of ingenious solutions for all kinds of clients, corporations, foundations, nonprofits, education, academic and university clients. And we have an intent, and our intent is to accelerate positive change. It's to use these for good. Human ingenuity has also been used for lots of other things. So, if you want to increase your supply of ingenious solutions, the first practice I would encourage you to take on is to be bold. Identify the dent in the universe that you want to make. Consider Daniel Birnbaum. He's the CEO of SodaStream. He could have bowed to the rational orthodoxy. He could have set the bar for his business at becoming number 1 or number 2 in every market in which they compete, a familiar goal. Instead, he got bold and he intertwined SodaStream's business mission with a social mission of healthier and happier people and an environmental mission of a healthier and happier planet. And then he got started by taking on Big Soda and the billions of single-use cans and bottles that they produce that end up in our dumps and our parks and our waterways.
With SodaStream, you can save 2,000 bottles a year. If you love the bubbles, set them free. SodaStream.
That ad was banned in the UK for denigrating the soda industry. Daniel aligned his people with the moonshot of eliminating single-use bottles and cans, a moonshot that focused them on creating value not only for their shareholders, but for society, the planet, and future generations. He was bold. If you want to increase your supply of ingenious solutions, get out. Go to unfamiliar places. These places that make you attentive, receptive, and give you inspiration that you can't find in the familiar environment. I want you to consider Eric Ashe. He's the Chief Marketing Officer for the American Legacy Foundation. He could have bowed to the war room orthodoxy. He could have hunkered down with his team in Washington, D.C., and brainstormed ways to interrupt Big Tobacco's attack on African American youth with menthol product. He could have done that, but instead he took his team to Detroit. He took his team to Detroit, and he let the people and the places in Detroit surprise them. He let them inspire his team, and he let them teach. He invited serendipity. He went out. And then he co-created ingenious solutions with the people in Detroit, fashion, music, and games that were designed to activate young African Americans in the fight against Big Tobacco and the fight for their lives.
Children learn best by mimicking the culture that they're in. That's where the problem is not having a good model.
If you go to the store, it's easy to purchase them because they don't ask for IDs anymore.
Right.
So anybody can buy them nowadays because they don't even ask me for ID anymore.
Eric and his team escaped the gravitational pull of meetings, their desks, the telephone calls. For 5 days, they were in Detroit, and they returned with 14 ingenious menthol-fighting solutions that they could have never conceived of in D.C. If you want to increase your supply of ingenious solutions, think wrong. Break the synaptic connections in your brain that result in predictable solutions. Consider the participants in Project M. These young designers could have bowed to the best practices orthodoxy. They could have conducted studies, town meetings, worked with local government officials to take on the entrenched social, economic, and environmental challenges that they wanted to confront. Instead, they thought wrong. In this example that I'm going to share, they started with a teammate's secret hidden talent for making pies and a shared desire to make people smile and make people happy. That turned into something called Pie Lab. Okay? Pie Lab is a social experiment in Greensboro, Alabama, to bring blacks and whites in a divided community together around a single table, cups of coffee, and a universal love of pie. Okay? Pie Lab was successful in that building. It moved to Main Street. This was a long, empty retail space. The Project Emmers renovated this space for $8,000. $7,000 of that was spent on air conditioning. If you've been in Alabama in the summer, you want $7,000 worth of air conditioning. They made these movable walls out of abandoned sharecropper houses. They used scrap table to create community family-style tables where everybody would sit together. And they won, in 2010, they won the James Beard Restaurant Design Award, losing only to the Guggenheim's new cafe. I think the Guggenheim had a budget slightly in excess of $8,000. I mean, if somebody knows different, tell me, but I think probably not. Today, Pie Lab's training young people in job skills and entrepreneurism. It's providing income to local seamstresses who are making these aprons. And it's providing income to local silkscreen artists because something about Project Emmers means they can't go to Alabama without designing T-shirts. And so the local silkscreeners are making a good living off of those T-shirts sold here. It's also become a social hub for the community, a gathering place, a true gathering place. And it continues to attract wrong thinkers from all around the world. On my last trip there in 2012, more than 400 buses full of hungry tourists had stopped on a main street that had never had a tour bus stop on it. They spent money pumping it into the new businesses that were starting to open up on this once dying street. They thought wrong. I have not read any socioeconomic development research paper that says start with pie. Maybe we should write that one. Okay, to increase your supply of ingenious solutions, make stuff. Discover what you can only learn by thinking and doing at the same time. Okay? Discover what you can only learn by thinking and doing at the same time. We have separated those acts. We need to bring them back together. I want you to consider Nada Bikes. The founders of this bicycle movement could have bowed to the strategic planning orthodoxy. They could have focused on predefined goals and deliverables and deadlines. Instead, they started a club to get more people on bikes, right? The membership card was a steel bike frame. You paid your $100, you got the bike frame that you had to build up and make your own. I wanted to express with that. But manufacturing steel frames in China and shipping them in cargo containers to the U.S., seemed to contradict both their mission and their values and the intent of this movement. So they started making bikes out of a more available resource. Now, this caught the eye of Marcia Folsom, who is the former First Lady of Alabama and who's on a mission to develop bamboo as a new crop for the state. So out of that, a new brand was created called Alabamboo, right? Which inspired Professor Lance Rake at the University of Kansas to invent Hex Tube. It's a stronger carbon-lined bamboo tube that's easier to build with, it's easier to make with, because it has a regular shape and a regular size, which is inspiring the making of even more bikes and more bamboo products, which would have never been in a strategic plan of any sort if they had done one, but it's put more people to work and more people on bikes, and it's brought Marcia that much closer to turning Alabama into the Silicon Valley of bamboo, which is one of her ambitions. To increase your supply of ingenious solutions, bet small. Increase your number of options, reduce your risk of loss, and accelerate your progress by asking yourself, what can I do on Monday? I'm going to ask you to ask yourselves that when you leave. What can I do on Monday? And get started on that. Consider Dave Batstone and Mark Wexler. They're the co-founders of an organization called Not for Sale. Dave and Mark could have bowed to the scale orthodoxy. They could have put all of their energy, time, and resources into one single grand effort to fight modern-day slavery. But instead, they're managing a portfolio of small bets in the US, the Netherlands, Hungary, Romania, Peru, Thailand, and South Africa. And they're discovering through those bets how to use responsible consumption, social enterprise, sports and entertainment to free the more than 26 million people who are enslaved around the world today. It's a portfolio of small bets that includes Free to Work, which is both a methodology that helps companies create a slavery-free supply chain and an app that helps consumers to buy from them. It contains Rebel Tonic that's made from ingredients that are harvested by vulnerable populations in the Peruvian Amazon, with money, profits flowing back into those villages and flowing into not-for-sale's impact programs. And it includes not-for-sale soup, which is made and sold by women who have found that cooking and catering and soup are a way out of the windows of the red light district in Amsterdam. And a little twist on the Fantasy Sports League, it's brought professional athletes around the world to join Team Not for Sale to fight slavery through an awareness campaign that's tied to performance-based donations. That portfolio of small bets is allowing them to engage with a diverse range of partners all along the supply chain of human trafficking. They're able to have options to make impact all along that. Finally, to increase your supply of ingenious solutions, move fast. Capture, consolidate, and share what you learn to accelerate your progress and the progress of others. Consider Emily Pillaton, a TED speaker, and Matt Miller, who are both the founders of Studio H. Emily and Matt could have bowed to the ROI orthodoxy. They could have bent and compromised their vision for a new kind of school until it produced the kinds of returns and numbers and spreadsheets that would attract a venture capitalist. Instead of ROI, they focused on LFI, learning from investment. And they moved to Bertie County, North Carolina, and developed their ingenious design build curricula on the fly. And then they open source that to accelerate the progress of others who are engaged in similar work.
Thing that we overheard from one of the town councilmen was about reviving the farmers market.
The idea of building something that's going to be used by our community and all, it's a little bit crazy. We're only high school students. It's gorgeous, it's amazing.
The farmers market is the beginning. If it wasn't for the farmers market, I would still be dreaming about doing what I do now.
Constraint really breeds ingenuity, I think, and that's what we're here for.
So by moving fast, Matt and Emily discovered the pitfalls, the opportunities, and the improvements that they could make that they could have never understood unless they're operating in their marketplace of change, unless they had gone live in that marketplace. And an investor probably would have blocked them, probably would have kept them from doing that. So we've had the privilege to work with these leaders who are operating at the lunatic fringe. They actually fuel our faith in human ingenuity. Their work strengthens our resolve. They prove daily that we can break these problem-solving orthodoxies that get in our way. But don't be fooled. These aren't creative geniuses that are possessed with some kind of superhuman ingenuity power. They're ordinary people. They're just like us who are coming up with new ways to jump the ingenuity gap every single day. And if we're to survive and thrive in the future, we need more people doing more of that. Thank you very much.